Welcome to What's the Scenario with PLRB, where we explore claims and coverage scenarios relevant to insurance professionals. I'm Alicia Watley.
I'm Mike Brode.
I'm John Hurley, counsel with the PLRB.
And I'm Tim Havler.
All right. Welcome, John, to What's the Scenario.
Yes, yay, John.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
All right. And Tim, what's the scenario?
Today we have a tree-lined residential drive in Boston, Massachusetts.
Nice, lovely.
The neighborhood kids were playing baseball in the street, and the big kid hit a home run. The ball landed on the roof of the insured's house. It was a flat roof with a drain in the middle of it. The ball somehow rolled right onto the top of the drain and somehow completely blocked the top of it. The poor homeowner had no idea. Heavy rains came through. This caused several inches of water to build up on the roof, finally finding its way, eventually, inside the house. This caused $20,000 in water damage to the interior of the building, and the insured is looking for coverage in their ISO HO3 2011 edition. The adjuster diligently goes through the exclusions and sees two that perks her interest. One is surface water, and the other is backup of sewers or drains. So, any initial thoughts, concerns, nostalgia for baseball in the street?
We lived on a busy road, so it was a highway, so we would have been dodging semi-trucks, so that probably would work. But we did have our neighbor kid behind us. He landed his drone in our gutters, so they were afraid to tell us, I guess, but I went out there and retrieved it for the young man. But so no ball, no baseballs, but a drone, more modern version of the baseball.
Did you give it back to him?
Heck no, I kept it. No, I gave it back. Of course, Tim, I gave it back to him. As a young man.
We don't condone theft here.
Right. Never.
Okay, well, we actually are interrupting our regularly scheduled podcast schedule because we got big news out of the Massachusetts Supreme Court. There's a big case on surface water.
Uh-huh.
So, well, I guess we could just start with the surface water exclusion. I think probably most adjusters know generally what it is, and we know kind of the prototypical situation you think about surface water is you have really heavy rains, and not necessarily, but that's a good situation. Heavy rains, the lawn gets saturated, the water kind of goes up and up and up, maybe migrates over to the dwelling and gets inside. Okay, that's surface water.
Right.
Melting snow on the ground, surface water.
Right.
Water on a street, surface water. Water on a driveway, surface water.
Surface.
What about a patio that's 6 inches up?
Attached to the surface, I would still say surface.
I'm still going to say surface because 6 inches, it's almost like the driveway or the street.
Right.
Pretty much. A sidewalk.
Yeah, right.
Sidewalk. Height of a sidewalk, yep.
Good example. But we can keep stretching this. What about a deck that's now a little bit higher up?
See, since we've been saying surface water for everything, I bet this one isn't.
Well, I guess it's going to come down to where you draw the line.
Right.
I would say
it's... Oh, I'm sorry. Do I get a chance to...
yes.
To say something? All right. I still think the deck is still attached to the ground. So I'm still with surface. It's attached to surface. It's surface.
We need a tiebreaker, John. What do you think?
Right, John.
I have a little inside information on this, but
so you can't say.
The higher the surface goes, the less likely it probably will be considered surface water.
All right, that makes sense.
Right, so an elevated deck, especially once you get up to, say, second story, now it's going to be a lot harder to call that surface water. But now, let's go one step further. What about the roof?
Well, based on John's analysis and where you're leaning, Tim, I'm going to say, well, how could you? Surface isn't a roof. That's a roof. A surface.
But it's a flat roof. Roof?
Roof. A surface.
Are we going to have this discussion, roof or roof?
I probably pronounce it wrong both times. Roof. Like a dog. Roof.
Okay, this is a surprisingly hard question. It's kind of a perennial question for adjusters. They've been asking it for decades. Originally, the line of thinking was kind of what everyone has been saying so far, which was it's more of the building component and not necessarily, it's not close enough to being the ground to say this is surface water. And it probably wasn't the original intent, although that's debatable because we weren't inside the drafters' heads. But historically, courts had held that surface or water on a roof is not surface water. And for a long time, that was, I would say, the majority position. Then in the last 5 or 10 years, there was a rash of cases going the other way, where courts basically said, you know what, that roof is really just a continuation of the ground surface. I guess if you think about it looking straight down, everything is the ground surface, and a roof is just, maybe it's elevated, but it's a continuation of the surface. So there were a number of court decisions that held that the surface water exclusion could apply to water on a roof.
Interesting.
But now we get this Massachusetts Supreme Court case, which is cutting back in the other direction. So it's a heavily jurisdiction dependent issue for our Colorado folks out there. You can look at Martinez versus AmFam, where the court said the rooftop of his home was a mere continuation of the Earth's surface, and the surface water exclusion did apply. But for our Massachusetts folks and for everybody, this is now going in the other direction.
So much for consistency.
I know. Well, that's what happens when you got 50 courts
50, right,
deciding all
50
these things.
states.
But I'm curious, Tim, how does something get to the Supreme Court in Massachusetts? Were there two lower courts that were in disagreement over this, or is it just appealed because somebody didn't like the decision? How's it work with the state Supreme Courts?
Yep, it's appealed because somebody didn't like the decision.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
I actually don't remember what the trial court and or appellate court said in here, but whoever lost would have appealed it. It would go to the Massachusetts Supreme Court, and then whatever they say, they might affirm the lower court decision or they might overturn the lower court decision.
Very good.
Like we're
Thank
talking
you. I know.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Alicia. I keep cutting you off, but
no, that's okay. I was
rude.
just thinking we're talking about Massachusetts right now and what
Yes.
the Supreme Court is talking about. But it varies from state to state, correct?
Correct. So, I guess then the question is for our non-Massachusetts claims, how much does this matter? A Massachusetts Supreme Court decision is the law of the land in Massachusetts. So this is not binding in any other states. So why is this such a big deal around the country? It's because state Supreme Court decisions aren't all that common in first-party property insurance. So when we do get one, everyone pays attention. So while it's not binding in other jurisdictions, it likely would be considered persuasive at the very least. Other courts might look at this Massachusetts Supreme Court decision and say, okay, well, that's what they said, and we'll take that into consideration when we're making our decision.
That makes sense. Especially for states that are close by, right, Tim? Or is that not the case? Don't they look to other jurisdictions that are near them and say, yay, no, maybe?
Maybe sometimes they would refer to that as, say, one of our sister jurisdictions, which are geographically close. Although ultimately, I think I would go back to when it really comes down to it, again, it's only binding in that one state.
Gotcha.
And other states can choose to look at it.
So surface water may be out, maybe, at least there. And if you can't pronounce the roof, I also struggle with Massachusetts, but I don't know. That one's a tough one too. But I think
Dialects are hard.
Exactly. So
Too many letters in it. Unlike Mike's state home of Ohio.
OH.
Not today.
All right.
Maybe today.
All right. Well, then I'll answer myself. There we go. But Tim, how about riddle me this one then? So surface water, not a go. We had another exclusion that might have applied. The backup of a sewer or drain, I think. This is a drain. Sounds like it was backed up. What about that one, sir? Huh?
Backup and overflow exclusion. Mike, you like to give me a hard time about having a policy on hand?
Nice.
I got the green one, which is the 2011 edition. Got them color coded here because I'm super organized. So let's see what the backup and overflow exclusion says.
Please.
All right, this is excluded now. Water which backs up through sewers or drains, or overflows or is otherwise discharged from a sump. Okay, it's not a sump, so we'll toss
that one
that
out.
part of it right off the beginning.
Yes.
So all we have left then is water which backs up through sewers or drains.
And we're saying here, since the ball was lodged into the top of the drain, it didn't really overflow from the drain. It was just blocking water from getting into the drain. Is that where you're going, Tim? I could tell by the way you were looking at me that that's where you're going.
Very good, Mike. Very
All
good.
right,
I think,
thank
yeah, I'm going to give two reasons, actually. That was my
Okay,
first
good.
one, was that how can you say that water backed up from a sewer or drain if it was never even in the sewer or drain in the
Right.
first place?
Good point.
Now, it is kind of strange that if the ball was, say, 4 inches down, okay, that argument isn't so strong anymore. But I think here, since the ball was on top, nothing got in. That's a good reason. And then second reason, water which backs up through sewers or drains. This has become sort of a term of art over the years, which means, in the majority view, water that is flowing in reverse as opposed to just getting stuck and overflowing the top. So, for example, a overloaded municipal storm system just can't handle the rain anymore. People
Right.
start getting reverse flow up through their basement drain, especially when the water starts off premises and comes on premises. That's more likely to be a backup. Whereas when water just kind of sits there or even overflows, most jurisdictions would say that's not a backup. So between one or these two other reasons, very unlikely that this exclusion is going to apply in this claim.
Very good. Alicia,
Yes.
any other questions, comments?
Well, I'm still trying to figure out, how the homeowner is supposed to know that anything's wrong if they're not,
Right.
usually you have someone who cleans their drains out. They do, regular maintenance on the home, not knowing that a ball is stuck in the drain on the roof. I'm just surprised that there's so many, that our adjuster is asking too many questions. That's just me.
Oh, Alicia, we got to go through the policy.
Yes, I know
Policy.
we do. I know we do. I just like to think people would, be nicer than that. All right.
Mike was a nice adjuster.
Yeah,
Exactly.
he
And
was the
it's
nice
dangerous on
adjuster.
those roofs, Alicia.
Well, here's the thing. If it's so dangerous, let's twist it up a little bit.
All
Say
right.
you had some rowdy kids, not the innocent ones who were playing baseball in the street like a Norman Rockwell picture. They're the ones who like to cause trouble and were climbing on roofs one day, and they saw it was flat. They can get up there easily, and they intentionally put the ball down the drain or in the drain. What happens then?
Intentionally. Oh, these rowdy kids.
Yeah, I know. Wow.
Okay, so I guess on that fact scenario, my mind first goes to vandalism.
You know where
And
my mind
Alicia,
goes, Tim?
go ahead.
Malicious mischief.
Oh, God.
Woo!
Here we go.
You know it had to be. Yes.
Mike's favorite. Alicia, I remember way back when we were talking about intentional losses, and you had asked if kids could form intent to perform intentional conduct. I think it's kind of the same question here. 10-year-old kids, they probably know what they're doing. That would be different from, say, a 2-year-old who's just exploring the world.
And if a
You're saying the 2-year-old's up on that flat roof? Come on. My goodness.
The 2-year-old
What kind of
sabotaged
world are we living in?
roof drain.
At least that's what
And
the
that would-
10-year-old said, right? Yeah, it was
would
my
be bad
2-year-old brother that was
parenting,
up
too.
there.
But actually, none of that matters because we have to remember what is coverage A. It's all risk or open peril. So once you have a direct physical loss, you start by thinking, okay, it's covered unless I can point to an exclusion that applies. Again, here, surface water, not in Massachusetts. Backup and overflow, no. There is an exclusion for vandalism, but only if the dwelling had been vacant for 60 days. So we'll assume that also didn't happen. And I can't find any other exclusions here, so I guess that would end up being a covered loss in Massachusetts.
Interesting. How about another twist then, Tim? Because this is kind of an episode of twists. So we're doing this in John's honor because he's new
Yes.
here. So let's twist it up one more time. Whoop, whoop. Here's the twist. Now, that drain was just blocked by debris like leaves and dirt and whatnot because that homeowner hadn't been up on that flat roof in a long time to check those drains. So now the leaves get stuck in there. Same thing. Water overflows, causes damage. Maintenance?
Okay, Mike, in this scenario, as the adjuster,
Oh,
did
geez.
you think after your thorough investigation that the homeowner was negligent or otherwise was performing faulty maintenance? Or do you think this is just kind of something that happens?
I suppose it matters how much and how long. That's where I would be. Like if you went up there and looked and there was like leaves that obviously had been there for a while, they had kind of disintegrated and were like a mush, and there's maybe some algae or other mold growth up there around it. And then I'm saying, hey, this has been here for a while, brother. So there I might lean towards the you weren't properly maintaining your roof. It looks like haven't been up there in a long time to do any kind of preventive maintenance or send anybody else up there. So maybe I would lean that direction. But you'll know in my career, Tim, I soon switched over to casualty. So, which is why I wasn't good at making these property calls. So I might need your help on that one, brother.
All right, well, let's start where we always start. Do any
All right.
exclusions apply? Surface water, not in Massachusetts. Backup and overflow, no. How about not faulty workmanship, but faulty maintenance? So if
Yes.
we're going to say the homeowner should have done a better job in their routine maintenance of their home. Now, Mike, I think a lot of the points you made were right on the money. It's not obvious that this is faulty maintenance. It could be, but it's how fast does the debris build up? How important is the gutter to drainage? Should they have prevented this? It can be a tough call for a claims handler, but claims handlers have to make tough calls. And one other point here, even if we do say it's faulty maintenance, we have to look really hard at the ensuing loss case law in that jurisdiction, because it could be that the water would be separate enough from the faulty maintenance that it could be covered anyway as an ensuing loss. So if I had that claim on my desk, I would go to plrb.org and I'd go to the 50 state survey for Massachusetts and I'd see what case law we have on ensuing loss. Look for the best analogy we can in the cases.
Excellent point.
Awesome. So, Tim, what can we take away from this scenario?
In July 2024, the Massachusetts Supreme Court held that the term surface water in a property policy did not clearly enough indicate that it could apply to water on a roof. The case is Zurich versus Medical Properties. You can look it up on Google. You can look it up on our website. If you're a
Yay.
PLRB member, and we have the case summarized, and we have our own attorneys commenting about it after the summary. This case is not binding outside of Massachusetts, but any decision from a state Supreme Court in the property insurance context is at least influential on a broader scale. So it's good for all adjusters to be aware of it.
Awesome.
Fair point. I think, Tim, you mentioned, you can certainly go to plrb.org to check out that case. You can look it up. But also, I think we have some stuff out there, other coverage questions on flat roofs with drain blockages, as well as a bunch of stuff on surface water, which is cool. So, Alicia, as we always say, would you be kind enough to share those links in the show notes somewhere?
Absolutely. So,
Hey,
yes. Also, in the show notes, you'll find a recap of the key points from this episode. You'll find links to our social media. You'll find information on how to submit your own adjuster story. So, thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe. Give us a 5-star thumbs up rating on whatever device you're listening on. And we'll see you all next time.
yay. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
The views and opinions expressed in this resource are those of the individual speaker and not necessarily those of the Property and Liability Resource Bureau, its membership, or any organization with which the presenter is employed or affiliated. The information, ideas, and opinions are presented as information only, and not as legal advice or offers of representation. Individual policy language and state laws vary, and listeners should rely on guidance from their companies and counsel as appropriate.